husband had no idea how we went from paying $156 a month.
Contrast that with the way I teach. I have a long way around the barn. I do a lot of talking because I'm talking to my kids. I'm counseling them. If they ever come to me with a question, they know what's going to happen. I'm going to give them an hour answer because I want them to understand the ramifications of subscribing to the view I'm going to give them, what the pros and cons are going to be, what other people are going to say, what they should see from doing it, and then reminding them that you're probably going to get a different outcome too. But you asked me for this, so there it is. And Caleb will tell you, like, I know if I come to you and I ask you a question, I have to make sure I've made time for this because you don't ever answer things short and sweet. And it's because I want them to understand my answer, not just, Dad, what do you think? Well, you know, grass is green, the sky's blue. Okay. Now, why the fuck is the grass green, Dad? And why does the sky look blue? And I go through the process of explaining all that stuff. So that way they don't just say, Dad thinks this, Dad believes this. No, Dad knows his stance on this based on this is what he told us. And that's why I do what I do in the descriptions of price runs and how to formulate this routine of reading it. There's going to be times where, even with my information, my concepts, it's not going to work out for any of you. So, isn't it beneficial to know when that's likely to occur? To ignore it, to pretend it's not going to ever happen, is a myopic perspective. Like you're asking to fail. It's been too many times coming back up to that volume and balance. And we're about 8 minutes away from the opening bell. I wished I would have been more interested in spending time finding my faults where I was initially trying to hide them from myself, and I would punish myself in my journals. I would really, it would be very jarring. It felt like therapy, you know, cussing myself out in my journal. And as I wrote it out, I'd feel, sometimes I would laugh to myself, like, that's right, yeah, you deserved everything I just said to yourself right there. But then once I'm done and I'm going and doing something else, taking a drive, working because I had a job then, I would think about what I said about myself. And I'm thinking to myself, man, if someone else said that about me, that would make me feel terrible. And I'm doing it to myself. And then as soon as I felt that, I dismissed it real quick. So what was I doing? I was allowing demons to fester, and I'm letting them make home in my mind, in my thought process, and it's extremely toxic. When I when I started looking at things that would help me not think that way, and I didn't hold myself up to, I have to be perfect in my expectation in the marketplace. I have to see these things every single time because I saw a pattern of me getting it right and my concepts were starting to flesh out. But then I would have these instances where nothing was working, like nothing made any bit of sense. And the market would just behave in a manner that was erratic. If we get below here, because it could still say no thank you, but right below these lows, this chart on the left hand side is a 5 minute chart. So below that is minor sell side. That it's at 19,924 ish. So if it goes below that, I would be interested in seeing a lot of speed to get down to upset the sell side here. That's still good if it wants to go higher. It doesn't change it to make it bearish. It just means that would be a logical place for it to dump at the opening bell. And then everybody think, wow, it's really bearish. And then they start sending it back up higher. That would be a wonderful opportunity. I would manipulate price like that if it was me. That's exactly what I would do. But I'm not in control of price, so. But the observations that I started making and looking at where my journal entries were extremely toxic, like really, really toxic. Bad days, upper right hand corner of my journals, I'd have an X. That was my way when I was going through, because everything I do is it's handwritten. Like I don't do electronic journaling. You all have the advantage of it today, but I didn't have that technology back then in the 90s. So I never wanted to transition from the high touch of journaling with a pen and leather journals to doing it electronically. I don't have the advantage of going and like sorting and searching for things by keyword or date. I don't have that ability to do that. So if I want to go back, and I can remember certain months out of certain years where I had really, really wonderful instances of things panning out wonderfully for me. But I also have very, very, very bad memories where I know generally I have some of the dates memorized because it's traumatic. Sometimes I forget my own kids' birthdays, but I can remember the days where I lost a lot of money. And when I was experiencing that stuff, obviously I would journal. And then at the top of the page, upper right hand corner, I'd have an X there. So whenever I wanted to go through days that were, there's your run to the sell side. So you want to be able to journal that. So we were looking at it up here, top of the buy side and balance, sell side efficiency, inversion, fair value gap, the volume and balance, hammered it one more time, and then delivered to the minor sell side. So these are all the things that I was fleshing out early on as a 20-year-old. Like I was trying to figure out how I could bridge the gap between what I understood about how price was transitioning to 100% electronic and no more open outcry. How can this be bridged? How can I see price in a manner where electronically it's going to deliver to here?
You want to play? Let's play. Excusez-moi.
Where we first started watching and observing and looking for it to go lower. It never just simply does a drop straight down from where you see an entry potentially at, from the time you see an entry, and this is where you think it's going to go. In your mind, as a new student, you think that, okay, my entry's here, so now I expect it in one candlestick to go right down there. And if it doesn't do that, every new candle it creates that hasn't really rushed to get down there feels like an eternity. So you have to learn to submit to time. And what I would do in the early stages of my development when I was codifying all these concepts is I understood that the market was going to go to this liquidity. I understood that part. But I had to have a way where I could see multiple instances of where I see a setup forming and where the market could go to. Okay, that's my range of opportunity. That range of opportunity needs to be defined. What do you mean by that? It needs to be defined. If I know that there's liquidity below these lows over here, then it's not just getting to that price point is the objective. It's to get to that price point and then below it, because it needs to engage that liquidity. So if I see this volume imbalance as a initial inception of a price run, and this is a terminus to liquidity, that makes sense. You all as my students, even if you're brand new, if you were watching just this stream for the first time, what I just explained, you may not know the volume imbalance of what the mechanics are around it. It's not necessary right now, but if you think that prices are going to move from that level down to this level because there's liquidity there, then we have to consider where is the ideal entry points. And at what point does the probability being high diminish from being high probability entries to lower probability entries? And that's where I ring in the premium to discount. So if I highlight this and no, I don't want to do that. Let's do it like this. From the entry to where I believe that the terminus was right below that relative equal low here. We have one more minute now. I'll finish this real quick. Here is the equilibrium price point. So at that price point or above, anything that could be used as an entry is a premium. Notice how everything below it you don't want to use it as an entry because you're so close to where it's going to go. But look at the volume imbalance. It's in a premium relative to the midpoint of where you believe it's going to go and where you believe the inception of the move begins. This is your point of interest, that PD array. That's where the inception of the move, the beginning of the move, and the terminus is where you think it's trying to reach to. So by framing that, every time you take a trade, you have to know where it's going to go. Your target, that's terminus, and where you're trying to get in at. And then from there, you frame where premium and discount is. Discount is below. If we're trying to sell short, you can't sell short in discount. You got to sell short in premium. Right back to inversion fair value gap. All right, opening bell. The fireworks have started. Sorry, you're probably going to hear my wife coughing. She's gotten sick because of my youngest son, him being sick. So keep me in prayer because I don't want to get that crud because they're fighting some nasty stuff. Let's do regular trading hours. All right, so we have a discount gap. Take this stuff off here. All right, so we have a rather every single time. Every time, man. Yeah. So mid gap is right here at 19,965. So again, 70% of the time, the first 30 minutes, that usually gets traded to. And now we can go back to electronic trading hours. And we're looking for the potential to run down into primary sell side. This little gap in here, that might be a speed bump if it gets down there. It doesn't mean it has to go down there. Let's go to a 1 minute chart on the left-hand side. Okay. Now remember, the opening gap is the initial bias, Caleb, the first 30 minutes. If you gap down that first 30 minutes, your primary focus is looking up to the midpoint of the gap. That's over here. That's this price level right there. And boom, there it is. So once again, you're seeing those odds I tell you about panning out. If you look for ways to trade turtle soup, one of the things you can practice is if you have the opening range gap and it is at least 40 handles or more, that's like my minimum, for interest on the first 30 minutes. If it's a larger gap, then I'm really interested on the day, and I'm going to try to most likely do most of my leverage that can be afforded to on that given trading day. 75 handles, opening range gap, that's really good. But here, every single day, if you have 40 handles or whatnot, you have a range to trade that first 30-minute opening range. If we gap down, it can trade up to that mid-gap price level. If it does something like this, where we've already identified minor sell side, and we have a low like this, trading down into it like that, you can do a buy on a stop, where it allows the market to put you in. Anyone that would look at turtle soups like this and think, man, how do you know where to buy? There are instances where I can be buying below that low, but other times, like today, I was looking for an opportunity for it to see if it could go a little bit lower. But if you want to trade turtle soups using the opening range gap mid consequent encroachment level as a draw for that first 30 minutes, when it breaks below the low like this, All you have to do is take the candlestick that right before this candle uh, low was formed. What candle pierced it? This one. So if you take that and you use the open of it, if it's a down closed candle, what are you essentially doing? You're identifying an order block, but you can trade inside that candle and use its opening price to buy on a stop. So then you could be a buyer here, trade up to the opening range gap midpoint, consequent encroachment, done. You're out. Small little high frequency trading entry, and back test it. You'll see it. It's many times a wonderful way to trade turtle soups. It's a mechanical entry, very very mechanical. Because if the market kept going lower, would you have been filled? No, because the buy stop would have never been triggered. So it has to trade to that price point, and then once it goes to it, it kicks you in just like a stop loss would be. If you were short, it would knock you out. Well, in this case, because you don't have an existing position open, what's the mechanism behind it? You're buying from a position of flat, your sideline. But now the only order that's executing is when price trades to that opening price, it would trip you in long because it's a buy stop. And then once that occurs, you ride it to the mid gap, which is what you see here, and look what the price has done since then. You think that's random? Mid gap, drop down, now aim for the sell side over here, the equal lows. Remember that show in the 80s, Mr. Wizard's World? One of my students said, "You're like our version of Mr. Wizard." Some of you young guys and gals out there probably don't know what that is. Just Google it, you'll see. It's an old. I used to watch the show too. It was neat because he would do like these little experiments. He'd take baking soda and put it in this little thing here, and then you do this and do that, and something that your mom would come home and see you mess around with after school, be like, "What the hell are you doing, Michael?" I'm just doing what this guy on TV did. What the hell? Why do you have my shit out here? Put that stuff back in the cabinet, and I'd be in trouble, right? But that's what you need to do as a trader. You need to study, get in here and tinker around and see what these little candlesticks do together. How they communicate, how they behave with one another. All right, I'm going to take this line off because it's no longer salient to us. It was just marking the first initial minor sell side. All right, see how we dug into this gap here with this wick? If we can roll over and trade below that low, it should, if it does so, it should have speed to drive down to that area here with the relative equal lows. I'm watching the wick on this candlestick right here and its halfway point. Now this is a little bit of a cloudy delivery where it's not as clean, it's not real efficient, but it's better than it was the other day. So when we have less impactful news around the days that we're watching price action, you're going to see how price is just so nice. It just creates these really clean price runs. See how many times it keeps coming back, back and back and back and back and back. Still reaching for where we're looking for it to go to, but still it's spending a whole lot of time painting candlesticks, overlapping the previous candlesticks range, going a little bit lower, but still staying inside this group of price ranges that are pretty much the same things. That is not a market that I love to be in. That's what you want to see right there. Okay, see that? So we have consequent encroachment, mid gap up here, inversion fair value gap here, consequent encroachment there, breakdown, then the gap, consequent encroachment on this wick right there, stopped price, went lower to the sell side. And that would be your laboratory for the opening range. It did the 70% strike rate of hitting the mid gap. So opening range gap, it went to half of it, which is up here, and then used it for what? That was your turning point to get down to where was primary sell side. So here's several things that you can view. I gave you multiple instances of how you could trade this, the very specific mechanics behind it, where the entries would be, where it's going to draw to. Any one of these instances could be your model. Every single one of them are all equally effective. Not one of them is any better than the other, because it's what you do with these setups in your own hands. Once you get good at it, like you spend time years from now, like 10 years, 15 years from now, you're going to be able to see a whole lot more setups where I'm sitting here casually talking to you and I watch what it does here, watch it. I can see the setups, but I have to teach in a way where I'm not trying to convince Caleb that there's something better than what he's trying to focus on. I have to be neutral, but still point out, no, watch what it's doing here, watch what it's doing here. And it's fun. Like, to me, it's like meditation. And when you can see what it's going to do and you get to experience how it behaves after it does it, and then when it delivers where you think it's going to go, it feels like time travel. It feels like many of you students are now saying it, it feels like I'm not allowed to know this. Like you feel like you're expecting to knock at the door, right? Like someone's coming here, hey, we need to have a talk with you. So, and I get it, I understand. Let's use that reference point from up here at the inversion fair value gap. Let's say that you were looking for once it broke lower down here, if it comes back up and hits the inversion fair value gap, if that was to occur, you would use that as your point of interest, the inception of the price run. Where is it going to run? We were pointing down here to relative equal lows. So if you're aiming for the relative equal lows right there, can you see how at that midpoint, that's equilibrium to the price run? So you're basically, you're grading, is what this is called. You're grading the unrealized dealing range. It means it has not delivered down here yet, but you can anticipate where setups are going to form. So for the question that folks are asking, how do you pick the right fair value gap? How do you know that? Well, the inception of the move is here, dropping down. If it breaks out, if it breaks below this low, we know that there's a stronger likelihood it's going to reach for the relative equal lows over here. But how can we enter? I took the initial minor sell side liquidity line off and I said, no, we're trading right inside this gap here. If you look at that, where is this gap in proximity to the 50% level of point of interest, terminus, where you think the market's going to draw to? It's in the upper half, right? So that means this is a premium array. You can't look at this and say, how is this a premium array when we're this far away from that high? Because you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And that's exactly what you see these yahoos on YouTube doing. They're trying to talk with my terms, but they have no understanding about what it is they're doing. And then that's why their students are not making money and they're quitting, and they go and they find another ICT mentor. They find another ICT mentor. And they're ignoring daddy who's doing this for free, literally explaining it right from the source. But you don't want to, he talks too much because I want you to know everything about it. You think I would shortchange my own kids? Because I'm going to go through the process of teaching it. I want to make sure I never have to have that conversation again. I've exhausted it. So I use every bit of the available bandwidth when I'm teaching something. If I have your attention, I'm going to hold on to it and grab it by the throat. And you're going to learn it the right way, whether you like it or not. Or you'll turn the video off and be stupid. Okay, it's your choice. But Knowing where the market's going to go and where the inception of the move is, that's how you frame premium to discount. And then what you can do is, with that information, everything relating to that information that you're getting in terms of premium to discount, you can anticipate without even having to throw a fib up there. You can visually see that from that inversion fair value gap down to the relative equal lows, halfway point is generally that low. So if there's a fair value gap above that, well, you have one here and you have one here. So if this was the first one you saw, but then you looked and saw this, what does that mean? You could use this as your entry, and that's exactly what the bodies are doing here. You see that? But the higher one, you have to allow for what? It to stab up into it. Model 2022 logic. This is a breakaway gap. There's no need for it to go up to the third one. The third one is a breakaway. It means it's showing its heaviness. This is one it could trade to. This is one it's most likely going to see the body stay inside of it, and that's what you see here. See that? So yes, we wick up to the higher one. We don't even bother going into this because this is a breakaway gap. This stops the move. It's ideal if it stays in the lower half. Look real close. Did it stay in the lower half? Yes. Is the rules repeating over and over again? Is the logic still there? Yes. That's not buying pressure, stopping that. The buyers didn't say, well, let's all collectively stop having any interest in going higher. Because if you look at your level 2 data, yahoos that keep saying, show me your level 2 data, show me this, show me that. Why the fuck didn't the orders get up here tagged? Why didn't they get there? There's orders resting there, right? Because it doesn't give a fuck about those orders. It's saying, no, you're not important. But Michael's logic is important, and we're going to follow what he said. It's almost like I know what I'm doing. It almost knows like it's dad. So the bodies trade up into it, and the bulk of the volume is shown in the bodies. The narrative is determined by what the bodies are telling you. But the damage, where it takes the unlearned, the people that are unskilled, the street money, they are the victims inside the wicks. Smart money is tracked by watching the bodies. That's what's occurring. So when individuals in the capacity of a smart money trader, when they're trading price, they're focusing on the bodies of the candles. That's what they're following. All of them are following the same logic that I'm showing you here, but they're not concerned about this because they know that you're all cannon fodder. All of you, without having this information, you're all cannon fodder. That means you're going to get blown away because you don't know it. You're brought up in this industry right from Jump Street with ignorance. With everything that's taught to you with retail stuff, you're literally being fed poison and you don't even realize it. And they put a little bit of sugar on it by allowing influencers to do certain shit. And then you think, wow, I want to trade whatever the hell it is that's, exciting right now with people putting fast cars and girls barely clothed and whatnot, rented villas. And you think, wow, I could have that if I traded with their bullshit. And it's easy. All I got to do is put it on my chart and just tell me if it's going to be a buy or a sell. And it's not important. That doesn't make the market go up or down. And having this understanding will change everything about what you're doing. Just take a peek over here on this 1 minute chart. Okay, we cleared primary, sell side, went to the lower quadrant of the weekly buy side and balance sell side efficiency. The remaining portion of the gap, that means anything above here, there's buy side resting right there. So they're going to make a run for them. All of these gaps over here, now because you're part of what, this is part of the sell side of the curve, all this drop down. Now we're going up. So look at this like a rock surface of a mountain, okay, or a rock climber. If it wants to go back up and run for that buy side up here, it can use all the reference points over here as footholds and handholds to pull itself up to attack that buy side. It doesn't need to do that, folks. It can go straight up and just run right for it. And that sometimes is what you'll end up seeing in days and weeks of non-farm payroll, where it just runs away to get the stop. And it doesn't really give you a chance to get on that last little bit of a move. That's also characteristic of manual intervention. It's also characteristic of non-farm payroll weeks, where if you're a new student of mine and I'm teaching you how to use PD arrays, and all of a sudden you see this big sudden run, boom, it just takes off and goes right for the stops. You're going to send me an email. You're going to send me comments. You're going to say, but look what it did here. It didn't do anything, and I can't see. Right. And that's because the characteristic of the market being manipulated, it's not affording anyone to get in on that move because they're running for the stops. And if you're a brand new student, that's a very
Minnesota State University, Mankato. When it comes to bringing real positive change,
they're not targeting your stop. Are you nuts? Like, seriously, that's exactly what they're doing. Like, they're doing that all the time. That's the lifeblood of the marketplace. Like, without liquidity, nothing's going on. no, nothing's going on. No one's trading. No one's getting filled without liquidity. You can't get your long on if somebody ain't willing to be a seller. And I can't get my short on unless somebody's on the other side trying to be a buyer. That's liquidity. That's what makes the markets go around. Okay? But that liquidity is scheduled to be taken in at a specific time of day. It's scripted. And the algorithm doesn't need to know how many contracts or how many lots in Forex are resting above or below relative equal lows or individual highs or lows. So anyway, I got about 8 minutes and then I'm going to cut bait with y'all. It's fun when you sit down and you just lay down all your preconceived ideas about me as a person, whatever you think you know about the markets, and say, let me just listen to this man and let me hear what he has to say. And then watch what I point out in price and how it should behave and how it should deliver. And you think about that. It's like, wow, there's no excitement. There's no concern for being incorrect about it. And we're all just watching price deliver. And we're looking for signatures in price action that are repeating. And if there's something that you're seeing that's repeating over and over and over again, that's the stuff you're supposed to be writing down in your journal. The things that you're having the questions pop up in your head about, that's the early onset of you having a model fleshing out in your own hands. It may not be the fair value gap. You may be seeing something else. Don't go on to Twitter and say, hey, I'm paying attention to this and this is what my eye keeps seeing. Because really what you're asking for me to do is co-sign and say, yeah, I see you. I recognize you today. And to give you like the attaboy or that girl, and that way then you can start doing videos and say, yeah, ICT co-signed this. He gave me the approval. He touched my shoulders with his sword and now I'm knighted. Okay. If you are seeing something in the charts, just recognize it and start observing it. Record it, journal it, screenshot it. When you see something, even if I'm not talking about it, screenshot it. And real quickly, just send yourself a text message or whatnot about what it is that you want to do more research on, but still watch the live stream live. If you have the ability to watch it live, there's nothing better than that. For folks that can't be here live, you have the next best thing because the recordings are never edited. I can't edit them. Once the live stream is done, YouTube has it, and they're never ever they're never augmented. There's never ever any kind of change to it. Now I might change the title and add something after the fact because I might include something in the discussion but the content and the things I say during the live stream, they're never changed. Either I'm right or wrong. It does what I said it's going to do, or it's not going to do it, and or whatever I said is how it is. If I make a mistake and say something that was mislabeled, which because I'm not using a script and I'm doing it live and I'm doing it over very, very low time frames, I'm human, so I'm going to make a mistake like that. You don't realize how many times I'm making a mistake saying things in the pre-recorded videos where I have to go through and edit these things out. Sometimes I'll, like in the pre-recorded videos, you never hear me cussing because I never wanted to have that part in those pre-recorded videos. But you can hear I cuss because if I see something and it makes me think about how I want to discuss something, and then because I'm thinking about how I see people literally talking out their ass, they have no idea what they're talking about, or they'll misrepresent my concepts or me or my students, or say that this stuff doesn't work. Like I'm trying to throttle them because I'm literally out here proving that they're idiots. Like they're idiots. Anyone that says that this stuff doesn't work at this point now is someone that should not even be listened to. I don't mind being trolled and have a jab at me once in a while. It's fine. It's fun. But if you're going to stay here and you're constantly the same guy all the time saying that didn't happen, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you're not watching the streams. You're not paying attention to it because I'm calling it, I'm outlining it, how it should deliver, where it should go, and you watch me doing executions now too. With one contract, $3,800. One contract. So if you were trading with a $10,000 account, that's 38% with one contract in one fucking day. Didn't do the math on that, did you? And that was just me playing around. Just playing around. What happens when you do that 5 days a week? London session, New York session, trade the lunch macro, PM session, last hour trading. 400%. Come on, that's a fucking 2-day holiday. Get the fuck out of here. So, in the final minutes, I want you to think about how you have to start scheduling low energy input during the times where there is high impact news drivers like the non-farm payroll that we're going to have on Friday. Thursday and Friday of non-farm payroll, they are a no-touch day if you're brand new. Don't even touch it. Don't do nothing. You can trade the pre-market session before 9 o'clock on Wednesday. But as soon as we get to 9 o'clock, if you haven't had a trade, don't do anything. If you're a new student, don't do anything at all. I want to see it run from here up to mid-gap and expand higher. So mid-gap is this red level here. And above that, we have primary buy side. So I would expect that to be the draw going into lunch. All right. So, but I want you to think about how you can go into your economic calendar, study that, and look for high impact news drivers, not the medium impact ones. Medium impact news drivers, they can be traded. That's not a big deal. But high impact news drivers, if they are, again, in closing, FOMC, they're usually the afternoon events, 2 o'clock, 2:30, two-stage delivery. Then you have CPI, PPI, non-farm payroll. They are 8:30 delivery. So you know what time they're going to occur. If you look at the economic calendar, you know every single month what day they're going to occur. So all you have to determine then is when in the week are those days of those reports being released. If it's on a Thursday or Friday, then you know that their best trading is going to be on Monday and or Tuesday. If the report is on a Monday or a Tuesday, that means you do nothing at the beginning of the week, and then you'll have salad days, easier trading as the rest of the week trades on. But you have to see where that report lays inside of the week. Is it on a Monday? Is it on a Tuesday? Is it on a Wednesday? Is it on a Thursday? And is it a Friday? And how that lands on the calendar, what day of the week it falls on, will help you look at the information that I put in my 2017 mentorship. lessons where I teach the weekly profiles, how the weekly candlestick will paint. And by using the economic calendar, you can kind of like get a feel for, oh yeah, if I'm bullish, generally on a higher time frame, and then I see a CPI, PPI number, or like this week we have non-farm payroll. So we've already satisfied the move going down into this blue shaded area, which is that weekly buy side imbalance, sell side inefficiency. Just watch the first 15 minutes of Monday's live stream. Okay, if you watch that, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, where that information came from. It delivered it perfectly. So because it's a non-farm payroll week, it's already done enough for me. I don't need to do anything else. For you, when you're looking at your economic calendars, it's a real good study for you to do it when we're done with the live stream, or tonight if you go home from work or from university or whatever it is you're doing. Pull up an economic calendar, go to forexfactory.com or Econoday calendar, and look at, for instance, October. Where is the CPI number? Where's the PPI number? Any FOMC? Then look at November. Do the same thing. And look at what day those high impact red folder events, PPI, CPI, FOMC, and non-farm payroll. Those are the destroyers. Okay, they are the reapers that are going to come through your harvest and tear it all up. They're the rot in your harvest. So you have to be careful being around them, because if you lay your good money around them, they're going to infect and cause it to decay too. So cut that stuff out of your trading. Don't allow that report or the manipulation around it to affect what you have built or what you're building. So since you're all trying to harvest money, think about it like that. If you're cultivating this opportunity of making money in the marketplace, you're basically creating a farm. And you want to be able to harvest this continuously and have a healthy farm of income. These reports are like a plague. If you don't offer any opportunity for them to touch your harvest, then you can't be affected by them. But you have to be aware of them, because when they're in the field, that means in the week that you're trading, you have to handle yourself carefully, because they have an effect before the day of its release, and they have a specific effect after their release. Trading gets easier on the other side of them. Trading against them up to the point of the release of that data is harder than it needs to be. So if you understand that simple characteristic, that's not complicated, is it? It's pretty simple, straightforward. But you wouldn't get that, in me talking about a 5-minute video, because you're going to have 1,000 different questions. And I've covered a lot of questions that would have came up otherwise by everything I said today. So know your calendar, know your events, know your characteristics, how price is going to behave, know what day of the week the reports are going to come out. Non-farm payroll Friday, it's a built-in thing. It's always the first Friday of the month, generally. And then there it is. It's going to be a Friday event. So if it's going to be non-farm payroll trading, that protocol is you have to trade the Monday. You absolutely have to trade the Monday, because Monday's trading on non-farm payroll is easy trading. It's easy, easy, easy trading. And Tuesday can be rather decent as well. But as soon as we get into London of Tuesday, my local time in the United States, think about New York local time. The London session of Wednesday, which would be technically Tuesday night going into Wednesday morning for me. That London session usually is the last bit of good price action. And then when we get to the New York session, it tends to become messy. But if you look at London last night, that was a shit show, because everything that's going on between Iran and Israel. So because they're lobbing each other with terrible weapons of destruction, the market makers they were using London to set the stage for this morning. And you watch what we did this morning. We mapped it out, looked at what was likely to happen with no emotion, I mean, I'm sure it was fun when it was going to where we said it was going to go, and you probably smiled or you probably slapped your knee and said, "Hot damn, this ICT did it again!" And that's fun, that's cool, but it's not something you should try to hop yourself up about. And the same thing, don't be fearful or upset when it doesn't deliver. When you're studying, you're doing a laboratory. That's all it is. It's just a laboratory experiment, and you're trying to get the data collected with experience. The experience is the data. You seeing Price do these things, repeating over and over and over again. And if you don't record it, if you don't journal it, if you don't screenshot it, if you don't write down what it is that you are observing. I don't like iPhones. I will never own another Apple device in ever. I will never have another one. They're fucking trash. I will never have one. But your phone has a voice recorder if you have an iPhone. Samsung has something equivalent to that as well. While you're watching the live stream, okay, you can have a digital recorder too. Like I have a digital recorder. Like sometimes when I'm driving around, I can't stop and pull over and write down stuff. I used to do that when I was working as a vendor. But now I always keep a digital recorder, in either in my vet or in my SUVs or wherever I'm driving. I don't ever have it in my wife's car because I'm not allowed to do that kind of stuff. When I'm with her, I'm supposed to be just with her. But if I could sneak one in there, I would. But the the idea of having a voice recording while you're watching the live stream, like if you see something, like right now we're watching this, it's at 10:06. Okay, so 6 minutes after 10, I want to look into why price is expanding lower after it went back to the consequent correction in the mid gap, and then there it is. Because unless you are logging something, because my videos tend to be long, not this one because we're getting ready to close it. The and it's not a joke. It's not a punchline. I'm telling you, I'm closing it. But every time I say something, it's got a little bit more detail I need to add to it. By you recording it in a digital format, you're not writing anything down. You're still watching price, and you're probably still hearing what I'm saying, but you're not as attentive. But at least you're making a notation about what you want to specifically go back into. Because if you don't do that, I'm going to say something else in the video, or eventually there's going to be a day where I get it entirely wrong. I mean, you have a couple weeks left, right? I might get it entirely wrong. And then you're going to be met with that as something to wrestle with. Wow. Man, he went like 8 weeks and a half of consistently being able to say what was going to happen. But today, he was really off today. And you won't retain anything that was said or something that you would have been thinking about going back and doing your own research on because you didn't write it down, because you didn't record it. And a voice recording is the easy way for taking notes. And then you listen to that note, audible note, and you write it down in your journal as a question or whatever it is that you were trying to do that calls specific attention to it. For those that have the ability to sit down here and write down, you're just going to write down at 10 minutes, 10 minutes, at 7 minutes after 10 on the 15-second chart, fair value gap, question mark, or whatever that interest or concern was. You just write it down, but just still keep watching the live stream. Some of you don't want to do that. That's why you don't watch it live, because you don't necessarily want to be doing anything to copy me. So you're going to get the same experience. That way, when you watch the stream, you can pause it, rewind it again, pause it, write down your stuff, and that's fine. And that avoids having a second watch of it. But for those that are going to watch it live, you're either going to have to watch the stream twice or do voice recordings. You have it on your smartphone, just have it in your hand. And then when you see me talk about something, or you see something in the chart that I'm not referring to, but you're like, wow, I need to take a look at this later on. If you don't do that, you're probably going to forget about it. And that's terrible, because I've learned my lesson. So by having a voice recorder, it's a little digital voice recorder. It doesn't cost that much to have them. When I'm driving around, I'll get an idea, usually about lectures, usually something that I'm going to teach on, or I'll have questions that certain students in my private mentorship have asked me, and I have deferred answering them or deferred putting them into the next lecture like this. And predominantly, it's most of the things I'm talking about are actually questions that I know would come up in my son's mind while I'm talking about certain things. And if it's not that, it's questions that my paid private mentorship students that no one can join. I'm not doing a private mentorship for money anymore. Just stop asking. You can't join it. But I have to tell you that this is the framework of majority of why I talk so much, because I'm answering their questions. You're not privy to what they're asking. You're not part of that community. But I am obligated to that community because they paid to be in that position. So when they ask questions, I look for opportunities how I can show them in real time price action. It's altogether something different. If I just simply said, well, you're asking about when a fair value gap can become an inversion fair value gap, and what time of the day does that become problematic, and when is it more likely to occur? Well, when I talk about it over price action live, they see me explain it before it actually develops. So not only do I get the chance to explain to them and answer their question, but I'm also demonstrating it with prowess and ability and skill set to prove that it's not something in hindsight. So everything that I do when I'm talking is methodical. It's not because I love the sound of my own voice, because in fact, I don't like the way I sound. But I do want to make sure that my students and my children that are watching these videos, they understand to the degree that I'm willing to share, because I don't want them to know just a little piece of it. I want you to understand it intimately. Like, I want you to know every aspect about this specific thing and what things have an impact on it, what things are not that impactful for what you're watching me discuss. That's mentoring. That's someone that knows exactly what they're doing and understands the source material. Otherwise, I'm going to talk about it after it happens, like everybody else is going to do. And you're not learning that way. You could just do the same thing. Think about it. Some of you are paying money to people and they're talking about shit in market replay. You know what an order block is by the term. And you can probably go back through the charts and look at market replay and say, oh, look, here's a down close candle. And it went down into that later on at this certain time when I never would have expected it because I don't know what I'm doing. So therefore, I can now talk about this actually happening. And you can talk to yourself in the same way and save the fucking money. You're not learning from those people. They're talking about yesterday's headline news and they're putting a price tag on it. Hey, pay me for yesterday's newspaper. Come on, man. If you know, you know. That's the bullshit. But when you can come out here and say what the headlines are going to be tomorrow, and then the headlines are what you said is going to be, and then you can prove it down to a 15-second interval, suddenly there's something different. There's a stark contrast there. And that's why I do what I do. I stay in an area, in a small little inner circle where nobody else gets to step into. It's just me. I'm in here by myself. And in that little tiny circle, I allow my experience to be viewed by commentary, by lectures, and I share my experience with you. And over time, being exposed to that experience, you will adopt your own experience. And that is the collection of the data that you are harvesting when we do these live streams. Whenever you watch my old pre-recorded videos, it's the same thing. You should be listening. And if you see something in there that's outside the scope of what I'm talking about, take note of that, because what's actually occurring is your subconscious is keyed up on something that is drawing your attention to it. It's interested. Your your reticular activating system is keyed up on this very thing. And if you don't pay attention to it, you might actually slow your progress down. If you see something that's inviting your curiosity, explore it, have fun with it. It may be another PD array. It might be a propulsion block. It might be a institutional order flow entry drill. It might be simply the breaker. It could be an inversion breaker where someone would see a higher high and it breaks down and it looks like a market structure shift lower. And if it trades back up to the low of the bearish breaker, you think that that's a short. But what happens if it's really higher time frame bullish? It's going to trade up to that bearish breaker and trade above its candle that makes the breaker and then use that as a bullish order block. That might be your model. That might be your go-to thing. But if you don't explore these little early stages of curiosity, this is the fun part of your journey right now, folks. Like, this is the fun part. This is the most exciting part. Because once you know what you're doing, it's fucking boring. Like, it is boring as shit. Looking at these candlesticks and saying, yeah, this is what it's going to do. And you lose all that magic of that aha moment, that moment of astonishment, but that first experience in your own hands. It's like losing.
That was normal. You know what else is normal? 1,000.
Next thing, because I have lots of shiny new objects. So if your subconscious is keying up on something that's outside of the scope of my conversation in the lecture, don't don't ignore that. Do not ignore that. I try to foster the flexibility in you as the student to let yourself, your personality, and what you're interested in, because I don't know what you're studying, what you spent the most time in, and you don't realize you're doing it either in the beginning. You might go in thinking, I'm going to do what Caleb's doing. I'm going to learn the fair value gap. I'm going to do Cameron's model. I'm going to trade the silver bullet. I'm going to use Michael's daughter's model for 2022, or I'm going to use the optimal trade entry. Fuck all this extra stuff. I've been sticking with OTE. I'm an OG for OTE. Okay, wonderful. You got your model. Wonderful. But I'm not going to stop teaching my kids and making content for them because you found out your model. That's great. I'm glad. I want all of you to do that. But if you don't explore your initial curiosity, that you keep seeing things pop up in the chart, and I'm not drawing your attention to it. There's a lot of things I'm seeing in price action. I'm expecting to see certain things behave and certain candles to form this way or that way, but it's not germane to what it is I'm discussing at the time. I'm aware of it. I got 81 ways that I can see all these things doing stuff. But if it's not part of the discussion at that given time, it's not going to increase the efficacy of the lecture I'm trying to deliver. It's actually going to cause too many moving parts, and it's going to dilute the message of that individual perspective or focus for that day or that session or that live stream. So anyway, I gave you an extra 16 minutes, no extra charge. So I'm going to close this one here today. I'm going to wish you all a very pleasant day. Hopefully you learned something today. Hopefully you were encouraged by another tape reading session. You can see what we were looking for, and that is going to be it for today. Until I'll talk to you again tomorrow. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think we're going to do another 8 o'clock start. I'll probably be on time this time. But we'll try to be here tomorrow at 8 o'clock or just shortly after 8, worst case scenario, because there'll be a news driver at 8:30, and I want to study that with you real time. And unless the Lord takes me home before that, I will touch base with you then. And till then, be safe.